Hello, welcome back to the channel. I am joined once again by Laura from a Brick Without a Wall podcast. And today we are going to be talking about the Wheel of Time animated movie, which this is something that's been in the works for a while. Originally, it was announced as an Age of Legends 3-part series written by Zach Stentz, and now it's got a little bit more information on it that it is being directed by Jay Olivia, and he's worked on a lot of Marvel and DC animated stuff. But yeah, like this is something very different outside of the scope of the Wheel of Time television show on Amazon. Is there anything with this that like sparks your interest?
I'm not somebody who watches a lot of like animated series or anime, but with this, I'm pretty excited to see how this comes out. I did watch The Nightmare of the Wolf, which is in the Witcher series, and I enjoyed that as far as like animated productions go. But I'm excited that this one's like about the White Tower, right?
Yeah, that's apparently so. Previously, like before this deadline article was released, like probably a year ago, maybe a little bit more, it was supposed to be Age of Legends. And the White Tower was built after the Age of Legends. So, like, when this came out and
Oh,
they were
okay.
like, it's the White Tower, and I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe they're abandoning this Age of Legends original idea, maybe. I'm not sure, but it was said to be focusing on a young girl, like, going to the White Tower and I guess, like, her trials and leaving her small village behind, which very similar to what we get with our young Two Rivers kids in, like, the original story.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Nynaeve talk about the woman who was her mentor? Why does this sound like we might be watching an animated movie about her? And I'm not against that. I'm just saying, like, I do remember Nynaeve talking about this woman in season 1.
Right, but they
So,
turned her away. So, I mean,
right.
it'd make a quick film if she gets there and they
That's
were
true.
like,
That's true. I forgot about I took just a small sampling of my memory and was like, "This works." Do you think it's going to be a character we already know? Or do you think it's gonna be like a new
I think it's gonna be totally new. Like, they might
Okay.
reuse, like, Wheel of Time names because there's thousands of them. They could, with their eyes closed, pick one. I mean, there's so
Right.
many to choose from, but I think with, like, this show, I really believe it's gonna be something that's a total standalone series. Now, there's obviously, like, lots of things within the Wheel of Time, like, prehistory that is very cool. Like, there are some characters I'm thinking of, like, some Amerlins that end up being legendary Amerlins of, like, the highest regard, where they could like zoom in on one character like that and be like, okay, but what was it like when they were a child or something like that coming to the White Tower? Also, they could go totally off the books, like something more in line with like, I'm thinking of like the Star Wars universe, how, you get like these companies where they have the IP and they're like, okay, we're just going to do all of the stuff, right? Well, then, like, Star Wars did something with Andor where it's a little bit outside of, I guess, like, what everyone knows, so it's kind of like a standalone. It's still within the universe, but it's, like, new material, and honestly, like, that makes me really excited because it gives people a lot more to work with and a lot more freedom to just tell whatever story they want without having to work within the confines of, like, source material, and sometimes, like,
Right.
you do get these shows where, like, that's better.
I have some questions that may not have been answered yet. First of all, who are they bringing in on the project?
I mean, we don't know anything except for the
Okay.
man that's directing it, who's worked specifically in animated shows, and then the screenwriter, the person who wrote the script, he's done, I think, a Thor movie, and he's done some Netflix movies, but, like, relatively,
Okay.
like, someone more in the comic book world.
All right. I just I guess I really hope that they don't, like, call up Branderson and ask for his opinion. Because what I don't wanna see is him take to the internet to try and tank another one of, you know, the Wheel
Some
of
more
Time
Wheel of
is
Time property.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I want him to take to the internet again
Mm.
about another Wheel of Time piece.
I don't think he will be, working with this one. I honestly think, though, with something like this, it can bring, like, a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, I'm not someone who watches a lot of young
Yeah,
adult stuff, a lot of animated series. I mean, hardly any at all. Like,
yeah,
the last thing that I watched was Attack on Titan, which it's not for children. It's also unhinged, but it's not like anything that I've ever thought would be a thing for the Wheel of Time. Like, this is just
right.
especially aimed at younger audiences because I don't
So they've,
know.
like, made it clear that this is gonna be, like, a young adult thing.
Yes, yes.
Alright. That adds another layer of things I don't really get into, like,
Yeah,
I really don't get into a lot of series that are geared towards young adults, and a lot of that
yeah.
is just my age.
Same, and I guess the other question is, like, where will this air? Who's going to be putting this out? Is it going to be like an Amazon? Is it going to be
Straight to
Netflix?
DVD.
Is it yeah, exactly, like, what are the
Is that
details on
even
this?
I'm really curious as to, like, what exactly this is gonna be, and I also wish I could ask them, like, "Why did you decide to go in a young adult path?"
Yeah, yeah, that's I mean, it's
Like
really a big question, like, what's the motivation here?
right, because they took the book series, which was probably a little more young adult than the show became, and they aged it all up to make it more adult, like, viewer friendly. So to me, it's just like, I wouldn't say it's like a strange choice. I'm just curious as to why they decided to revert back to young adult for the animated movie.
Right.
Or is maybe they figure that's like going to be their target audience for an animated
Mhm.
movie. I have no idea.
Also, it's talking about, like, motivating factors, is this, like, also with the idea in mind, like, "Hey, book sales, we wanna hook them in while they're young and
That's a good point.
keep them going till they're older?" I mean, obviously, I wouldn't recommend The Wheel of Time to, like, I don't know, like, a 10-year-old or something, like
Redirecting it back into a young adult movie, I'm not against the choice. I'm definitely still gonna watch it. I'm just curious as to how it'll blend in with the TV show and the
Right.
books.
Right. As we've seen in the past, I don't know, let's go like 20 years. How often are they trying to make like a cinematic universe based on one IP? Like HBO, like they took Game of Thrones, now it's House of the Dragon, Dunk and Egg, this Snow spin-off series, Jon Snow, like they're trying to do it all. Harry Potter, like that's same thing. Like you've got the movies, you've got these other side movies now.
I mean, if you think about it, anything that's really taken off that was adapted out of a book series kind of tends to become its own universe. So, like you were saying, we have Marvel, DC, Star Wars, A Song of Ice and Fire. We have the Harry Potter universe. I do believe that The Hunger Games is releasing more movies. The Witcher is now becoming its own universe. And I'm not against it. It's when you pay a lot of money for IP, I understand wanting to get your money's worth, as Disney showed us with the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah.
And it does seem like animated options are becoming more popular with the purchases of IPs, Wheel of Time, The Witcher, things like that. I'm just curious to see where they take this.
Also, like young adult. So what does that mean exactly? Because like when you watch a movie, it'll be like TV-13, where it's like they'll allow you to throw in some cuss words and you see a little bit of gore.
Right. I guess I also really want to know like what kind of animation style we're looking at.
Exactly.
there's very specific types of animation style that I will watch, but some of them are too much for me, if that
I'm
makes sense.
I'm hoping it's leaning more into, like, muted colors and whimsy and not so much, like, flash bang, exciting, bright neons, and something that I feel like
Yeah.
I associate more with comic books, like the really bright, vivid, like, colors and stuff like that, but, I mean, it's for me, like, it's just a personal preference, and, like, also, like, I can find certain things to be a little bit, like, too much stimulus, so it's like, "Okay,
Yeah.
like, that's a lot." But again, like, that's why kids like it because it's, like, bright and exciting.
That'll be my thing is, like, seeing how young they go with this will probably play a really big role in watchability for me personally.
Okay, so I want to ask this. Considering this is a story about a young girl going to the White Tower, written by a man, directed by a man, is there anything like about this that you like do
They
certain
better
things?
bring a woman in to consult on this. Like, you want me to believe that a man can transition himself into the mindset of not just a woman, but a young adult woman?
Look,
I
like,
hope it's not a cliche. I hope it's not a
yeah,
cliche. Like, I don't wanna see a headstrong little girl who is just out to prove to the world. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, that I'm trying to think of a good character to reference here. Bro, I don't want another Daenerys Targaryen.
there you go.
Quite frankly, I don't hate her as a character. I think she's just a little bit cliche as a character in some ways, and it does kind of feel like her character wasn't actually fact checked with women ahead of time.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, like
Like
that's the
they end up
thing.
putting that masculine edge into them. Do you know what
Right.
does that make
Well,
sense?
yeah, so often, like, we get female characters, and it's like, how do we show that she's strong? Okay, like, we have to assign, like, these stereotypical, like, male qualities, like a someone who's, like, been in war, someone who can fight, someone who's indestructible. She's not out swinging a sword, but she's riding an animal that will fry an entire battlefield, so it's like this, like, conqueror type energy, but
Yeah.
with this show, like, I don't know, like, and I'm not saying, like, just with the information that we've been given so far, it's just, like, men, like, men's names attached to it so far. I'm sure with, more time will come more details, but it's really interesting when they're doing, like, a coming of age story about a young girl, and it's like, "Oh, but, like, who's it written by? Who's working on it? Tell me all the
Yeah.
facts." But The
It
White
would be
Tower, it's
nice.
like it's such a female-centric story, so
That's kind of where I was going with what I was gonna say next is that I find it kind of disheartening in a way that it's such a female-centric story, and yet so often it's just, like, men participating in the adaptations and, like, the forefront of participation. I'm not saying there aren't women involved whatsoever,
right.
but I think it just takes away from the cohesiveness of the characters. Do you ever watch characters that are women and you just know a man wrote them?
Yes,
Yeah, that's what I
perfect example is Sex and the City. Like, Sex and the City was written by a man. The way that these women are written, I'm like, "That's not realistic." Is it entertaining? Oh god, yes. Like, I'll watch it all day.
for the age we are, Sex and the City is just a cornerstone of
Yeah,
television. Like,
yeah,
I don't know anyone our age who has not watched some position of Sex and the City through time,
right.
whether it's the original show, the movie, the new adaptation show, like, they've watched some portion of it. But yeah, the characters are wholly unrelatable.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
if I were to be
I'm a
like if
writer,
somebody were
but
to
can own a
say
whole property and, like
yeah.
I own my property in New York on a writer wage. Okay, sure. Alright.
Isn't she like a freelance writer too?
I think so.
She writes a
Carrie
column.
Bradshaw, get out of
She's
here.
Look, who doesn't want that life? Like,
Oh,
honestly, who doesn't wanna traipse around Manhattan and all over the world and have an endless source of income
her
for
endless
living
clothing budget.
expenses,
Yeah.
the clothing, the entertainment? I just don't know anybody who's like, I don't know any women who find those characters to be relatable. And saying, like, that they're obviously written by men doesn't make them any less entertaining, it just makes them unrelatable.
Obviously, like, these are 2 totally different, like, examples that
Right.
we've got going on, like,
We went
animated children's show, Sex
to
and
the
the
super adult Sex in the City.
But what I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, it's possible, like, it can be done, but it's like, well, should it be done? And I mean, I don't know, like, I guess it just depends because someone who's writing, like, the screenplay, like, that's just when you're looking at how things are made, like, that's, like, the rough draft, and then you bring it to the next step, then you bring in, like, a whole other team, and they're storyboarding and moving things around and doing more dialogue and switching things up. So I mean, like, I'm not saying like I don't like it because women aren't involved because it's probably like very certain that there will be women involved. But
Right.
at this time, like it would be nice if it's like written by this lady and directed by this woman. Like that would be great to see as a
It would.
woman who loves this story, the setting, and then it's specifically like it being a story about a young girl going to the White Tower. I guess also I'm just hoping that I want to say like setting, but what I guess I mean is like time period of the story it is that it's something really interesting because within this kind of like prehistory, so like everything we see like before, like Rand and Egwene and Nynaeve, there's all of these like really wild historical events. So like I think personally, I would love to see something in one of these time periods where there's like, I don't know, like a war or something going
I
on.
I wanna see Age of Legends
Yeah,
content. Like, it
same.
sounds like a really good time back then, but also, I am unclear as to how long it's been since the Age of Legends existed.
It was about, I think, 3,000 years.
Okay.
So you've got like about 3,000 years from like the breaking of the world till Rand and company go off on their merry way.
Okay. That's a jump.
Yeah, like there's a lot there's a lot to choose
So,
from.
I don't know why, but in my head, I was thinking it was like 300. I just needed to carry another 0 into that, but 3,000 years leaves a pretty, like, wide berth of time periods for this adaptation to be taking place in. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see, like, where exactly in this time period it lands.
There's like a specific time period where some guy named Arthur Hawkwing he tries to do a siege on the White Tower. Like this dude
I
thinks
actually
he's
read all about this.
yeah, yeah. Like that would be a very interesting setting.
Yes, it would. Didn't he pretty much conquer most of the known lands?
Mhm. Yeah, his descendant, I believe his son was like, "Hey, I'm gonna cross the ocean, see what's over here." He became like the leader of the Shan nation. That's why the Shan came back and were like, "We're taking back this because it's ours because it belonged to our ancestor Arthur Hawkwing." But the Trolloc Wars would be another like really incredible setting because
Yeah.
you've got, like, the nations coming together and kind of, like, banding together, but then you have, like, all of these wild twists that happen where, for example, like, the 2 rivers where everyone's from, like, that used to be a place that was ruled by a king, and this place just gets wiped out during the Trolloc Wars because the king there sent the White Tower a letter for help. But the Amerlin was a petty, petty woman and didn't like the queen of this country and was like, "No help for you." So, yeah, like, there's There's a lot of, like, wild stuff. I'm actually, like I've been doing a little, like, research because I'm gonna start doing, like, a series where there will just be, like, these quick videos on, like, random bits within, like, the prehistory that I think are
Okay.
actually really cool, but, like, nobody talks about because there's just not enough information on them, but I don't know, like, something like that I think would be really fun, like, picking one of these random stories that just there's like there's just like this a paragraph maybe at the most information on it and being like, okay, like that's the setting we want. Let's construct an entire story based around like this moment with like different characters just like in this world in this time. That's what I hope anyways.
I love that idea. Like, I enjoy prehistory and things like that from, universes that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So, that's exciting. I can't wait for you to do that. I'm off
I'm
I started now I'm just thinking about that.
I'm excited to do it because that's like some of the stuff that I really love, but again, like it's not enough to do like a whole podcast episode on. Like you can't fit that
Right.
much information into it, I guess. But I don't know. Like
Well, I guess can you even source that much information?
right, right, exactly. Exactly. But I don't know with this show, like with this animated series, I guess. The other thing that I'm hoping that it leads to is just more within the Wheel of Time universe because as I just said, like there are multiple time frames and locations where they could really like bring some really interesting stuff in. Like obviously like something like the backstories on all of the Forsaken, like the actual
I would lo
breaking of the world, like that yeah.
Yes. Yes. Do it. Age of
Mhm.
Legends, I wanna see all the Forsaken become Forsaken. Just
Yeah.
please, Amazon, do it. There is an endless amount of people on the internet who are, like, talking routinely about how the show has managed to make the villains of this series incredibly likable, like, more likable than a lot of the main characters. And I get that people who have read the books are probably going to wholly disagree with me, but I haven't read all the books yet. I've only started a little bit into the first book. So all of my like engagement with the Wheel of Time has mostly been through your podcast and the show itself. And in the show, I could literally watch offshoots of just the Forsaken stories. That would be incredibly enjoyable, especially if they can get the same actors to do it.
Right, right, that would be awesome, or
Oh
even
my
if they did,
gosh.
like, animate it, like, get their get the voices,
Yeah, get
like,
their voices.
that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be incredible, and I do think that this universe has a lot to give in,
Mhm.
like, way of different modalities of shows, whether they be animated or live action, whether it's a series or a movie. It's a pretty big universe, right?
Yeah.
So, when you look at a map of this continent, globe, whatever you want to call it. We've got like the primary landmass, then we've got the Shan-Chen landmass, then we got another landmass like over here. And we haven't even gotten to the ones that are down on the bottom of the globe yet.
I mean,
The
there's
land of the
islands.
madmen.
Yeah, that's an interesting
That's the one I
one.
was talking about where they could probably create a lot of content out of the land of the madmen because there are like some stories about how they don't let outsiders in anymore. They have channelers down there. They're kind of living in their own secret society at this point almost. And then you've got the Shan-Chen who are just like, I'm not sure what they think they're doing in defense of the light, but they like come across as like really questionable.
Oh, they are. No
Oh,
doubt
they
about
are.
it. No doubt
But
about it.
they do have delightful uniforms. So
That's true. That counts for something. If you're
it
gonna be
does. It counts
awful,
for
at least
something.
look good doing
At least
it.
look good. Because they look a lot better than the Children of the Light do.
The Children of the Light look like a Mr. Clean ad, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Though I do hope to see Child Valda next season.
Hey, I've got a working theory that every season he just gets injured. So like he shows up every season with like a different injury. Like this season it was like an arm wrap. Next season, I don't know, maybe he'll have a neck brace, maybe a cast or something. End of the whole show, he's just like in a wheelchair or they're like wheeling him around like Weekends at Bernie's.
Yeah. I have a question that's kind of related to the animated show just because I'm wondering, and kind of not. What's the deal with Paddon Fane? How old is he? He was not locked up when the rest of the Forsaken were. He's been out on the loose, right?
So Pot and Fane is like an amalgamation of like different entities, but the show hasn't really done that. So Pot on Fane is
Oh,
actually like also Morda, this creature that was like locked away in Shale Ghul with the dagger, with Matt's
okay.
dagger.
How
That
old?
nobody knows. It's like an eldritch terror. Like it's not even really like a human. It's like this thing that just shows up different places and causes
For all we
mayhem. Yeah, like there's a
That's the
whole
whole reason I
nation.
wanted to know.
Yeah, there's a whole nation that just goes missing after whatever like Mordeth is shows up in a nation, they all go crazy, turn on each other, probably kill one another, and then like no one sees them again. An entire
Okay.
nation. Pot on Fane in the show is something much, much, much different. Much different.
So I could make the largest leap ever and say possible for Padan Fane to be in the animated series if we
There
don't know
you
what
go.
time period if he doesn't have a timestamp on him,
Oh,
then for all we know, he
I
could.
would I would love nothing more
So
than to see any type of backstory on Hall, this nation where everyone goes missing. If he could even narrate it, I'd be that would be great. I would love it.
that would be great. Now we're just trying to feed them ideas for
Yes.
things we wanna see.
Yes. But I mean, that's really all I had. If there was anything else on your mind.
The only thing that's on my mind is, like, being really excited to see where HBO goes with Dunk and Egg.
Ooh, yes. Ooh,
I
yes.
am I know that's not, like, technically relevant, but I am
Hey,
really
we're in
excited.
adaptation land right now, so it is relevant, kind of.
I am very excited to see what they do with that. You know this. I think House of the Dragon on a scale of 1 to 10 is maybe a 4.
Okay. It's
Like, I think it's
look,
a really low content addition to the franchise.
it it is not look, I've read Fire and Blood, not all of it, but most of it, and it is a for me, it was a struggle. The content, like the base the basis of Fire and Blood is just not something that I'm interested in, so it is what it is. Now, like, do I like the actors in the show? Like, is it at least, like, punchy and exciting, I guess? Yeah, sure, but it I don't know. It nothing's going to come close to Game of Thrones, like, early season, and if they do, I would probably put money on Dunk and Egg
That's what I'm hoping for.
being more in
Like,
line with what I like about Game of Thrones.
right. I'm not saying that House of the Dragon is the worst thing that's ever been put on air by any means. That's not what I'm getting at. But I do think that it's like a really low content replica of a Game of Thrones.
What is it exactly that just, like, doesn't do it for you? Like, is there any one thing?
It does not feel original.
Okay. It
It
to me
doesn't
feels
it
like
also
Succession
doesn't
with
feel like
incest. Like
yeah, there's a lot of obsession with incest, like, in a much more poignant way than there was in A Song
no,
of
I
Ice and
said
Fire
I said success.
or a Game of
I
Oh,
said Succession,
I thought you said incest.
I said Succession with incest.
Oh,
Like the show
well,
Succession. But
yeah, the
yeah.
Succession thing all makes sense, like, I get that, but then, like, this show has taken the obsession with incest and just put it up that's, like, the show's primary selling point is, "Do you wanna watch incest? Watch our show." Like It just feels very regurgitated from a Game
Yeah,
of Thrones. Like, we're gonna take these plot points from a Game of Thrones and we're gonna make small tweaks to them, and then we're gonna make a show out of it, which is fine and whatever, I guess. I just of all the Targaryen lines that they could have followed, they couldn't have done something, like, new, like Old Valyria
that would have been
the
dope.
coming the coming to Westeros. Like, instead, we're just watching the same family endlessly fight with each other, and I mean, how many seasons do they really think they can drag this out? The Targaryens don't last too long.
Like, that's I don't know. That's the thing, like, I guess, like, the main reason I'm not, like, such a big fan of House of the Dragon is because there are 0 characters that I'm rooting for. Like,
Yeah. Oh,
none,
that could actually,
not
that's a
1,
really good point to make.
except maybe Damon's daughters with what is it, like, Lena and Bela? I don't remember the names. They're all they're all the same. But the 2 younger girls, there's a handful of, like, sympathetic characters, but you're not spending more than, like, a couple minutes with them here or there, and it's kind of sad. I mean, like, I know that they want, like, the scandal and the excitement and, like, the visual moments, but it's almost like in this world, they're saying, like, "Look, if you're a good person, your story is not worth telling." And I'm not saying that because I need to have a good person, like, in the cast. Don't get me wrong, because I'm usually cheering on the bad guys anyways, but
Same. I think a lot of the villains in the story lack any sort of depth. They're all very, like, one note,
okay.
and I don't know, it's just I guess because I'm such a huge fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, it feels like an astronomical letdown. Fire and Blood is a book I could not kudos to you that you got through it, because I tried to read it, I tried to listen to it, I tried to do both at once, and I was just like, "I just don't like this." It doesn't do it for me, and
It's
the show's not doing it for me either. Like, I just can't get invested in it. Every time I watch it, I'm like, "This is not a good time." I'd rather go back and watch a Game of Thrones over again. Even better, I'd rather go back and read A Song of Ice and Fire again.
yeah. Hey, you should just you know what? You should get the Hedge Knight book. Well, you have it, don't you? Somewhere
I
in a
have it,
moving
I just
box.
gotta find it. It's in a moving box. I checked my Amazon account when I went to repurchase it like a month or so ago, and it was like, "Hey, you already bought this and all of its companions." So,
Yeah,
it did cross my mind to buy it again.
let us know in the comments if you want Laura to read A Knight of the Seven
I wanna
Kingdoms.
read it. I wanna read it. I gotta find I know about what size the boxes are gonna be. They're gonna be smaller because nobody packs a ton of hardback books into a big box, like, because that's insane
You can't
unless you
carry
wanna
that.
yeah, you can't carry it. You don't wanna die, so I just gotta find where the smaller boxes are, and then I'm gonna be able to,
Oh,
like
there's so much about Dunk and Egg that I find so enjoyable. Like, the characters are so enjoyable.
Fire
And
and Blood. I was so excited to read it, and then, like, 4 pages in, I was like, "Huh, I'm not liking this." And then I was like, "I'm gonna give it more time." And then I started just falling asleep every time I try and read it out. It just
uh,
didn't work. And then they made a show about it, and I was like, okay, why not focus on his singularly written works that are fantastic?"
ugh, I don't know, because he's just not getting it done. He's not
I refuse to give up faith that he will finish the Winds of Winter yet.
hanging on, hanging on.
I've literally waited the majority of my teenage son's life for this book.
It's gonna
My
end up
child
probably being closer to 20 years. If we get it, then it's
I
fine.
don't care. I just wanna get it. I can't give up hope yet. It'll be one of the greatest disappointments of my life if I never read The Winds of Winter. I've
I've s
given up on A
I've said
Dream
it
of Spring.
I've said it
I
before,
g
but if we get Winds of Winter, Road to Tarvalin is done. It is now George R.R. Martin
Everything's
channel.
done. Everything's done.
Done.
I've said this before too. The moment they announce Winds of Winter, I'm going into hard dissertation level study of that book. I'm rereading everything. Like,
There
I'm
is a
taking notes.
block. There's a block for me. I cannot reread it because I'm like, what's the point? Like, I'll just get depressed. Like, I'll just get sad that it's not ended. Like, what's the point? Hmm. But
I agree.
if we're getting another
But
book,
drop that date and we're talking about something totally different then because
drop a
it
date,
is
I'm
I mean,
unplugged.
drop a
Like,
date.
I'm
I
dead to the world. Don't contact me unless it's an emergency because I've got some rereading to do.
yeah, I'm gonna need a solid 3 weeks to
Yeah.
myself.
Yep.
Like, that's just gonna be I'm just gonna read all day and night.
Yeah. That's it.
I don't even remember why I originally started talking about this
Doesn't
because
matter.
now I'm
Doesn't
just thinking
matter.
about how, like, I can't wait until the release date of The Winds of Winter is dropped, and I can say it was a good thing I didn't give up hope
Well,
because 'cause it'll be the most exciting day.
they are allegedly in the casting phase for Dunk and Egg. So I don't
Oh, yeah,
know.
that's what we were talking about is I was excited about Dunk and Egg. I am not somebody who gets wrapped up in hoping that certain people get casted. Like, I don't even think about it. It
I
never
don't
crosses my
care.
mind.
I don't care who plays Dunk as long as like they have that like strong himbo energy, like naive yet gentle and kind, but looks like a Chad, you know?
Okay, okay.
Like,
I mean, they should be able to do that.
I don't think that's too hard.
No. I wonder how, like, do they have a projection date? Are we looking at, like, 26?
I think someone said 26.
I
I
just
think.
assumed, like, I was just like, "All right, if they're at casting, we've probably got another year maybe till filming and then 2
I
years for filming and
Right,
post-production."
right. Yeah, I don't know, I would have to ask someone like Carmine or something because I have not followed up on the dates.
Do you think that this is about to become a Rings of Power and Wheel of Time scenario with
With
alternating years?
Oh, yeah, I bet they would, definitely. I
Okay.
definitely bet they would, and I think that's the point, like, I think that is the goal for HBO because right now they are out of all of the channels, I think HBO is canceling the most shows or stopping the most shows compared to even Netflix, even Amazon, which
Really?
wild.
Compared to Netflix?
Yeah, yeah. But I think honestly, the only thing that can save them is to have something going at all times, and I don't mean, like, every month of the year having, like, a Game of Thrones spinoff, but they're gonna have to get to the point where they're at least having a big show like that every year and being able to,
Right.
like.
I always wonder, like, how on earth did HBO go from, like, heavy hitting out of the park and having multiple heavy hitters on Sunday nights, like, all year round, they were running great shows, to being like, "We're gonna need to scatter our shows to every other year, and we're gonna drop episodes," because when you and I used to watch, like they were doing 12, 13 episode seasons. The shows were
Mhm.
coming out, like, on a calendar. You
Yeah,
knew what month that show was gonna drop in the following year, and it was always done, and I just don't understand, like, how we've gotten to this, like, "Let's take 2 years
it's
for 8 episodes." Do
it's
you think it's just
sad.
all post-production?
I do. I think a lot of it is with especially within the fantasy genre, like all of the post-production stuff and CGI that they need to do. But I mean, like, look, like think of something like Dexter, you know, like you don't need. a whole lot going on. You shoot, they wrap it up. It probably doesn't take too long, but then something like House of the Dragon is just such a like a much, much bigger scale.
Right,
But
right.
I'm one of those people where like the CGI and like these big budget shows, like I'm just like, it's, that's not what draws me in. It's like the story first, obviously. But I mean,
Definitely.
and that's like the thing too with like Dunk and Egg. We're not out here flying dragons around, as sad as that may be. But for me, like the really like I think beloved heart of that story is just the interaction of these two characters and like the way that they play off one another. You've got like this wise ass little smart aleck kid who really is like smart, and then like this big kind of dude who's a bit naive and doesn't really know as much of the world as this little guy. So it's like, the buddy cop energy is strong with this one, and it's delightful.
I like that you called it the buddy cop energy.
It is. It's
I love
exactly what it
that.
is. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to read them once I find them,
Find your
unless
book.
Amaz unless Amazon puts them on sale and I can just justify buying a second copy.
Someone buy Laura a second copy.
Please.
That's that's where I'll
As
end
soon as
it. Oh, no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, my plan was at first I was like, "I'll buy a second copy and then I'll gift the original copy because it's never been touched. I've never
Oh,
touched it."
lucky number 7 in the comment section by Laura's gently owned but loved Dunkin' Egg
Yeah, not
copy that
not even used, just gently owned, just existing.
Uh, all right. That wraps it up. I think the next video that we're doing will be on your channel. So make sure you follow Laura, subscribe to her channel, and we will see you back next time.